Anyone? Yes, sir, John.
As long as we're talking about the city ordinances and the downtown light and the houses and all those things, let's throw into that mix also the sign ordinance. And I guess the larger question is, who's responsible within the city structure for enforcing our ordinances and seeing and making sure that they are complied with? I think a lot of us understood, Don, it was great, we finally got rid of that house, but it was, you know, it was a blight, it was a danger, and it was full of asbestos. It took 3 years and a group of citizens to do it. The city wouldn't act on it. You know, one of my pet peeves for several years has been the two big, ugly, blank signs for the Eureka, or the Casablanca. Oh God, they're finally down. But again, we have a sign ordinance. I talked to the council about why don't we change the sign ordinance to make sure we can't have these empty signs that advertise nothing, basically advertising our city is closed. They said, oh, there is an ordinance. I looked up, there is an ordinance. Yeah, you have a sign, it has to advertise a currently available product within 30 days and all those things. But how many years has it been? And so I guess my question is, whose job and responsibility is it to say, we have a sign ordinance, you aren't following it, you've got 30 days to do it, or we will, or whatever the solution is?
I'm going to raise the hand of somebody in the audience here who is one of my employees. John, want to address that?
Yeah, so the sign ordinance is enforced by code enforcement. And so the planning department is in charge of the of code enforcement, essentially. At this point, we operate on a complaint basis. We're limited on staff. Several years ago, we had a full staff of code enforcement officers. At this point, the planners, as we have time, we focus on code enforcement. Unfortunately, code enforcement was one of the employees, or several of the employees that were laid off several years ago, and so it's. But it is the planning department that is in charge of enforcing the code.
And John, if I could Mr. John Williams, if I can just mention too, this is, as John Willis said, this is a matter of resources. This is the fifth city I've worked for. Every city I've worked for, code enforcement is done on an exception basis. If it's not a life safety issue, I'm trying to find a better way of saying this. We don't necessarily go out and look for sign code infractions. We really don't have the time or the resources to be able to do it. But if you report something to us, we will follow up on it. Or if we see something that is a health safety issue, we'll take appropriate action. But this is pretty much the plight of every municipality I've worked for is that, again, it's done on an exception basis. What John says is absolutely true. There were probably, what, 6 or 7 planners a few years ago. We're down to 2. Most of John's time is spent, and most of his salary is paid out of the Department of Fish and Wildlife, as opposed to our budget. And John works on the habitat program, the county habitat program. That's one of his primary charges. And then he also has to do some of the other things as well. The only other planner that we have on staff is Richard Seacrest, who's the department head. Again, his time is fairly consumed as well. So we don't really have a whole lot of time to do it, but if you call us, let us know if there's a problem, we will go ahead and take a look at it and try to take appropriate action. So to answer your question, John, development services, you can always call me, or development services, and speak to either John or speak to Richard.
So I guess I understand the answer. Certainly I understand tight budget. Tight budgets are always a function of what budget items are prioritized, and prioritization apparently is not extend to sign ordinance or enforcement of some of these laws that we have. I guess if what I'm understanding is if somebody complains, then they will take a look at it at least. And I guess maybe that would be something we probably ought to advertise to the citizens is, look, we aren't looking. We don't have the time to look, so you citizens need to be the eyes of the city and let us know when something is out of line.
That's correct, John. And again, that's consistent with how the.
And I think the citizens would be happy to do that. Of course, the problem is you get a bunch of citizens calling in issues about things, and you still have the resources to do something about them. And that gets to a process of what do we prioritize for our resources, and I think that's one of the things that people talk about. But they would like to see a little more prioritization of the appearance of the city.
And it's certainly something we can take a look at in the budget, yeah.
John, let me comment about that. When you protract that out a ways, let's say as an example that you're dissatisfied with the signs that were up there from the Oasis, along with most of the people in town who looked at these falling off things. So you contact the Oasis, which of course was in bankruptcy, and you say, we don't like your signs because they're not advertising anything. We want you to fix them or do something with them. And the response comes back, either no response or we haven't the funds to do it. So the city then can follow a procedure, obviously, and assess a fine or something to that nature, in which case, because they're in bankruptcy, they don't care to pay it anyway. What do? You put a lien.
They've been out of bankruptcy for a long time.
Yeah, in other words, this could go on forever and a day, and still we'd be sitting there looking at the same ugly signs. And that's the issue that I see with some of these places in town. You can tell the owner, again, the old house situation, where one of the suggestions was to use eminent domain, which would have stuck the city for fair market value of the property, along with a lot of legal costs to go with it. The end result would have been nothing, except the city would have then been in debt for $umpteen thousand for a piece of property that maybe someday might get sold. So it's kind of you have to kind of hope that the people, I think, will cooperate. I got a call a couple weeks ago about a house in one of the neighborhoods, and I won't tell you the neighborhood or the house, that apparently the front yard was trashed. There were bicycles and toys and stuff screwed everywhere around the property lines. One of the neighbors called. I called down at Public Works, and they went out, took a look, and the people cleaned it up. But they did it voluntarily. Not even, I guess they don't realize what a mess looks like. You know, to them it's nice, to us it's not. But it takes a lot of cooperation on the part of the other side to do something. You just can't go in and say, you know, we're going to do it for you. If we were to take down those signs, let's say as a city, and condemn them, we'd be talking about $100,000.
I'll bet there is more worth of scrap metal in them than it costs to take them down. But the point is, I know they were in bankruptcy. They've been out of bankruptcy for a long time. And I guess my thought would be, okay, when they're out of bankruptcy, you say, oh, well, we told them to do it, they're in violation of the ordinance, and they said, screw you, we aren't going to do anything. And so nothing happened. No fine, no ticket. I park my car on the street for, you know, where it's not supposed to be, I get a ticket. They don't say, can you pay it? Say, here's a ticket. If you don't pay it, you'll end up in court and go through this process. But none of that happened. And then I guess I even got more frustrated when they finally got a demolition permit. We're going to take down all this stuff. Great. How about taking those signs down first? So they're gone 6 months ago. Just a suggestion. Hey, as long as you guys are doing this. But, you know, the second one came down, this week? And I kept wanting to say, they're through demolishing the whole thing except the two signs. And did anybody go to them and say, they're in violation, they never should have been up, gosh, take them down first, you know, or at least see if that can be done. Because I know there's a point, but we are here to drive people out of business, but we also, if we're going to make arbitrary decisions not to enforce our code and our laws, then I guess we need to understand that that's what we're doing, and the city has made a determination on that. Or change law.
Barbara?